At the entrance to political economy, you have two ghosts as bumptious gatekeepers: neoliberalism and Marxism. They both hold their position not because of the strength of their argument, but because they can both point at the terrible mistakes of the other. I wanted to break out of this collusive duopoly and find something better, which was supposed to be deep level, holistic, clearer, and particularly it was to have higher explanatory power for past and present surface action. And I wanted it to be non-moralistic, as if you could transpose the realist theory of geopolitics into political economy. We want to do political economy, hence to observe the economic system from the perspective of its inner social environment. This includes even to reflect upon how society, in particular the political system, react to the economic system and feed back onto it. But let's first look at the economic system left alone. Here we see a purely economic, rational logic, which has even some beauty, centered around profit making, and which brings about, as is well known, a strong motive for production. But unfortunately, we also detect a strong counter-trend towards depression and unemployment. This is the first finding. The capitalist economy does not, by necessity, deliver what would render society sufficiently happy. The economic system does not care about this result, but society does, and it reacts with social transfers, Keynesian investment, and so forth, which I jointly call prosthetics. These prosthetics, sadly, run into dilemmas, and ultimately, by necessity, society is not capable of funding the required prosthetics. This is the second result. Society can itself not heal the problems it has with the capitalist economy. Hence, capitalism, capitalist societies are in necessary trouble on the basic economic level and on the secondary level of remedies, it is on the prosthetic level. We have owners and non-owners. The non-owners can only subsist if they are employed by the owners, which the owners will only do if they can expect profits therefrom. This in turn requires that the produce can be sold in the future at profitable prices. Thereby, capitalism becomes dependent on its own future. Now, unfortunately, the future does not always do what would be necessary to justify full employment in the past. This is foreseen in the present and depresses production and investment already here. We can see how it works more specifically if we make the assumption that the produce can only be purchased by the monies emitted during the production. Then workers can only buy the produce up to the salaries they have received. And Supplier firms can only buy it up to the supply prices they have received. This recovers the cost. But the profit, how can the profit be procured? It can only be procured if all investing firms themselves, the very investing firms that are waiting for their profit, believe that it would be once more profitable for them to purchase each other's produce. Car manufacturers must buy computers, computer manufacturers must buy furniture, and so forth. I propose a distinction between a productive economy and a sterile economy to explain this. Only the productive economy buys new hard and software. In the sterile economy, you buy old pre-existing riches, land, other real estate, debt, stock, gold, etc. The problem is that investment in the sterile economy is often equally or more attractive than in the productive economy. Therefore, computer manufacturers often do not buy cars with the profit they make, but invest it into real estate or stock. In the aggregate, money flows from the productive economy into the sterile economy. The very quest for profit, the signature moment of capitalism itself, turns against circuit closure in the productive economy. This is the main reason for what I call the deficient producive spending syndrome of the capitalist economy. Sismondi, Malthus, Marx, in certain lines of his thinking, Keynes, Kalecki, and others were on a similar track. Piketty also looked into the direction, but he remained too general. I find great methodological and structural support in Quesnay. It was only because of the extreme unrealism of his numbers that his tableau économique of 1758 did not already show that the circuits of the capitalist productive economy are not going to close. There are four main means to fund prosthetics. The use of state power abroad, for instance, by drawing tributes, the use of state power at home, for instance, by collecting taxes, debt, and money creation. All four run into dilemmas. If you want to fund prosthetics abroad, e.g. the protectionist, colonialist, or imperialist way, you need to build up military power and win wars. That doesn't always work. Taxing finds the fierce resistance of politically strong domestic wealth owners. Debt leads into the dilemma that debt is normally to be repaid, even with interest. But that is not possible because of the continuously rejuvenating hunger for prosthetics. Even if you could accept ever-growing debt mountains, you would still have the problem that you would need wealth owners ready to commit growing and growing amounts of their fortunes lastingly to debt financing. it appears that the limits of the readiness of private wealth owners to hold debt were already reached or near in the crisis of 2008 or in the European sovereign debt crisis of 2010. After state fiat money became the base money of the world, which was only in 1971, the state fiat money creation clans behind remained sleeping giants at first, and central bankers appeared as slow-moving, cautious, and conservative people. But that image was never justified. Central banks had been founded to finance wars, and in doing so, they had always needed to go to extremes and had employed whatever it takes personnel. After the financial crisis of 2008 and the consecutive crisis like the European sovereign debt crisis, the Corona crisis, and now the Ukraine war, this came to the fore again. And the central banks, in a rush, refunded large chunks of pre-existing privately held debt by purchasing it on secondary markets with newly created money. From there, they went on to annually financing critical layers of the newly needed prosthetics, also in the same way. The problem is that money creation clans exhaust if they are overused via inflation and a fall of the foreign exchange rate of the excessively created currency. Put yourself into the shoes of today's imperial rivals. What do you do if you see a clan on which you have come to depend melt away? I think this question very much steers the political agendas of today's imperial rivals. They either have to try to stretch the capacity of their clans or to get ready to re-switch to other means of prosthetics fundings, which are also near exhaustion.